Hello, and welcome to 7 Minutes in Heaven, a podcast devotional for educators. I am your host, Praisha Jordan, blogger-in-chief of prayerandpedagogy.com. This is episode 4, Running Like a Winner. Let's get into it. So this week, or maybe last week, I saw a meme on my teacher's social media pages that said the 2 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas break is like the last lap of Mario Kart, where the music gets really fast and everything starts going all over the place. And as a 90s baby, I totally identified with that. Also, as a 90s baby, I was trying to explain this to my middle school students, and only like 2 of them understood anything that I was talking about. So if you'd like to feel outdated, definitely go for Mario Kart. But that meme really spoke to me because I am totally feeling this upcoming week's pressure, and it hasn't even started yet. I'm thinking about everything on my to-do list. I have 5 days left. There's so much to do in these next 5 days that I am feeling that pressure of the last lap. And as a person who likes to run a race, I love 5Ks. My personal favorite mode of self-care is putting on my tennis shoes, putting in my earbuds, hitting some pavement, and running until I can't run anymore. For me, running the race is all about the last half mile. How I run that half mile will determine how I feel about the entire race. If I walk and I'm kind of taking breaks and I'm slow, but the last half mile, I go beast mode, I feel great about the race that I ran. On the opposite side, I could be running and giving it my best effort for most of the run, but if I slow down and kind of quit in that last half mile, it really colors my perspective on how I feel about that entire run. And so as I was just studying this week, this scripture really spoke to me and really encouraged me, both as a runner and as a teacher getting ready to close out this race of the first semester. Let's get into it. Today's word comes from Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 3, and it reads, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you may not grow weary and lose heart." As I was studying this scripture this week, there were 4 things that stood out to me that really encouraged me to want to emulate this week. I see that when winners run, there are 4 things that they do to make sure they win their race. Thing number 1, winning runners stay on their feet. Second part of verse 1 says, "Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles." And if you've ever seen maybe a clip of a race where people have tripped and fallen, it is devastating. I think that the first thing that spoke to me was knowing that I needed to stay on my feet in order to run this race to even having a chance at winning. And so when I think about this upcoming week, how am I going to be intentional about throwing off everything that hinders? For me, that may look like avoiding certain conversations in the break room and not getting caught up in the spiral of negative talk about the kids or about different situations, because I cannot afford to be tripped up and I can't afford to slow down. I have to run this race to the finish, and in order to do that, I have to stay on my feet, and that might mean sidestepping certain conversations, certain situations to make sure that I can keep going. Thing number 2, winning runners stay in their lane. The latter part of verse 1 says, "Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." There is a lane that God has us running in, and we need to make sure that we stay in our lane. That may look like denying opportunities for extracurricular things and saying no to people and to situations that are trying to pull you in different directions, because when you're overrun and overwhelmed, it's hard for you to run your race. You can't run everybody else's race. We have to stay focused on running our race, and that means that we have to stay in our lane. And so for me, that looks like being intentional about praying to God and seeking His clarity on saying yes or saying no to different opportunities that I'm presented with, and denying some of them so I can make sure that I run my race well. Third, running winners stay focused on Jesus. Verse 2 says, fixing our eyes on Jesus is the way that we should be running with perseverance. And this is probably going to be the most critical part of getting through this week, is looking at and focusing on the joy of the Lord so that He can be our strength. That is how we endure. When we fix our eyes on the prize, it helps us to run our race so that we win. And so my encouragement is to think about ways that I'm going to be intentional about fixing my eyes on Jesus, about listening to certain music as I'm driving to work in the morning, about listening to or reading certain devotionals as I am going throughout my week. There are other devotional opportunities on my website, prayerandpedagogy.com. Feel free to check those out if you're looking for something that's geared towards educators. But we need to make sure that we are fixing our eyes on Jesus to help us endure this race. And then lastly, running winners stay focused not just on Jesus, but stay focused like Jesus. The latter part of verse 2 and verse 3 says, for the joy set before Him, being Jesus, He endured the cross. And verse 3 challenges us to consider Jesus, who endured this shame and this opposition and this cross, so that we will not grow weary and lose heart. So not only do we need to stay focused on Jesus, but Jesus even had to stay focused, and we need to stay focused like Jesus. Jesus had His eyes fixed on being obedient to the thing that God called Him to do. Everything, every step that He took, every decision that He made was about being obedient and following through on the job that God gave Him. And He used that focus, that joy of obedience, to help Him to endure through hard situations and challenging struggles. And like Jesus, we need to stay focused and be encouraged that when we look up and put our eyes on being obedient to the things that God has called us to do, that is how we run to win. So I hope you are encouraged to run your race this week, and know that when you cross that finish line on Friday, that you have won your race. So here is your hashtag 7-minute challenge for the week. One of the first things I learned when I learned how to study the Bible was asking the question, whenever you see the word therefore, what's the therefore there for? And so my encouragement to you is study chapter 11, right before this chapter, study chapter 11 and look at their Hall of Faith winners. Learn about somebody new. There are a lot of people mentioned in the Hall of Faith that we may already know, like Moses, Rahab, Abraham, but there are also some other people that we may not be as familiar with their winning story. Check those out. And then also this week in prayer and in your devotional time, consider, what is your faith story like, and how might you like for your name to be added to that chapter? This has been episode 4 of 7 Minutes in Heaven, Running Like a Winner. Thank you for joining me at the intersection of prayer and pedagogy. See you next time.